Chairman, Ms. Koh, congratulations on your nomination. Let me just ask you a baseline question about the free exercise clause in the United States Constitution. Is it limited to houses of worship? Is it limited to the physical space of a house of worship?
No, it is not.
So I'm struggling to understand your opinion in the Tandon case. I don't understand why you would think that businesses should be able to abide or should be able to be open and people should not be able to gather to worship in their own homes. Why would you assume that people gathering in their own homes wouldn't follow the guidelines, wouldn't obey the restrictions, and therefore couldn't be trusted? Help me understand that assumption. I don't quite get it.
Amazing.
On my part, it wasn't an assumption. That was the scientific evidence and the only evidence on that issue that was presented in the record.
Wait, it was scientific evidence that people of faith don't follow rules?
No, but that the risk of transmission is greater inside a private home than in a commercial entity that is regulated, that can be subject to criminal penalties. I recognize—
Wait a minute, wait.
That's just total bullshit. I call bullshit on that. That is just total, absolute BS. The scientific freaking data that showed that you're more apt to get sick in your own house. Where are they getting this data from? It's just all manufactured crap. But did you see what he said? Oh, but you know what? You could be liable for prosecution if you didn't follow through on the guidelines that were established inside a commercial establishment. Had nothing to do with the transmissibility of a virus or the spread of a virus. Had nothing to do with it at all. It all had to do about subjugating people, putting them under the thumb control of the state. And that if you didn't listen to us, we're going to penalize you, close down your damn store, or fine you to death. That's exactly what this is all about. And they said, oh, but you know what? We can't do that inside your own homes.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but your opinion says under the state's restrictions, commercial environments require masking and social distancing, a requirement that can be enforced by commercial workers. On the other hand, at plaintiffs' gatherings, it is uncertain whether participants in these gatherings would maintain social distancing.
My order also mentioned that there are criminal penalties for not complying with the restrictions on commercial entities.
Right, so you assume that because of those, that commercial businesses will comply, but you assume religious believers would not comply. I'm just trying to understand why you disfavor religious believers in this way that seems very personal.
She's a leftist and a lunatic.
All I can say, Senator Hawley, is that I certainly have no animus.
No, none whatsoever.
Maybe you have an implicit bias? Let me ask you this.
No, but
in the 2020 Women's Collective Summit, you said last year that stereotypes are deeply embedded in many people. I'm quoting you now. And they may not even be aware that they're there. Do you think maybe that describes your view towards people of faith? I mean, has the Supreme Court's reversal of you maybe prompted you to confront some implicit biases you may have against people of faith?
It's an implicit bias on her fact, and it's a complicit bias on her. Okay? It's both. She is absolutely prejudiced against people of faith. She may say she's a person of faith, but she's really not. She's just saying that. She's just saying it. I call BS.
I'm a person of faith, so I would have to be having a bias against my own.
So you're telling me no? The answer is no?
I do not believe that I am biased against people of faith. I'm a person of faith. My whole family is a family of faith.
Let me read you what the Supreme Court said about your reasoning. They said, you cannot assume the worst when people go to worship, but assume the best when people go to work. Why did you assume the worst when people go to worship?
Yeah, why did you?
I did not assume the worst.
So they're wrong about that?
No, I'm just saying that at the time, I looked at the evidence before me, and I looked at the Ninth Circuit precedent at the time, which was you're supposed to look through these 7 factors about increased risk of transmission. And that's the precedent I followed. I completely will fully, faithfully, fairly, in every case going forward, adopt all 4 of the holdings that the Supreme Court made and clarified in tandem. And I understand you cannot assume the worst of people as they go to worship.
But you think the
and when they
Supreme
go to
Court
work.
misdescribed your opinion in this regard when they said the state cannot assume the worst when people go to worship, but assume the best when people go to work? You think that's a misdescription?
I understand that's the law, and that is what I'm going to follow. I certainly had no intent to do that. At the time, I was following existing Ninth Circuit precedent and looking at risk of transmission and making findings based on the record, which is what I understand to be my job. I understand now that comparability has to be assessed in a different way. I understand that what the rule is on the narrow tailoring for strict scrutiny analysis. I understand how you look at what is neutral and generally applicable. All of that clarification, I really appreciate. I did not have it at the time when I issued that ruling, but
I didn't have it at the time when I issued that ruling because I was part of SIMR, an acronym that I coined, SIMR. I didn't do it at that point. This is what Lucy Koh is saying. I didn't have everything at that time to make a good judgment. So I just followed the stupid, idiotic rules and the precedent was set of basically, screwing the people. But that's because I was part of SIMR. I was a stupid, idiotic, moronic retard. And I promise that going forward, I will not be part of SIMR. I will not be stupid, idiotic, moronic, or retarded as we go forward. I know I made a mistake back then, but please, oh please, okay? I just want to be district judge, okay? Can't you overlook the fact that one time when I tried to be a statist?
I will fully, faithfully, and fairly follow that going forward.
Well, all I can say is that I'm concerned about the tone of your opinion. I'm concerned about the assumptions that underlie it. I think the Supreme Court's reversal of it was quite significant. And I think the assumptions that people of faith can't be trusted, but people who go to strip clubs, as Senator Kennedy said, can be, is frankly pernicious and something that's worth further examination. And for those reasons, among others, I can't support your nomination. Thank you, Mr.
And I can't support the nomination of this lunatic leftist, radical feminist, whatever you want to put modifier, adjective, describing Lucy Koh. It's just unbelievable that we had these leftist judges that were there that utilized the power, supposedly precedent, and the power of the state to make these kinds of judgments at the time, screwing the people in their state, just stripping away their rights completely under the guise of this stupid pandemic rulings that were, in issuing at that time, closing businesses, closing places of worship, issuing fines against them, in some cases, putting them in jail. I mean, massive fines, just doing everything that they could so that they could be the ones, just so they could have the power to basically move people in a direction that they wanted to move them. And that's what these people were, like Lucy Koh. And now she's begging on her knees, groveling and saying, well, I made a mistake back then. I really didn't have all the facts in front of me. But now moving forward, I will faithfully, forever, do my duty and follow all the rules that are in place. And I will take into account all this other stuff too that a judge is supposed to take into account. I mean, come on, folks. We know that's not what she's going to do. Once a leftist, always a leftist. Once a socialist, always a socialist. Once a Marxist, always a Marxist. Once a communist, always a communist. I'm not attributing all this to her, but she certainly is liberal and leftist. There's no doubt about that. And she has some animosity or some bias, some bigotries towards people of faith, even though she herself says she's a person of faith. Well, we hope you enjoyed watching the video. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your guest host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel, hit that like, share button, hit the notification bell, comment below, let us know what you think, and I'll leave you with my final thought, which is, when you're right, And when you're left, you're wrong. We'll see you again next time, folks. Take care and stay safe.